So the work I'm doing in this area is concerns the pension obligations for an aging population all around the world. There's a large potential burden from all these obligations. We have to figure out as a society how we're going to pay for them. So the work I presented today is about two important questions. One is in the best way to measure exactly how big those pension liabilities are. It's complicated because those liabilities involve payments that are going to be made for many, many decades to people where you need to think about their life expectancy and how long they're going to work and so forth. But another very important question is the discount rate. That is how you translate those future promises into their value today. So my main contribution has been in thinking about that discount rate and how it affects the size of the liabilities. Related to that is that governments and corporations need to fund those pensions by making investments. And there's a question about how the assets that are being saved should be allocated. How much should be saved in bonds, how much should be saved in stocks, how much in alternatives. The paper that I gave today is looking at the role for investing in stocks for trying to hedge the risk of these pension liabilities. The conclusion of the paper is that the amount that should be invested in stocks is related to the age of the workforce that you're saving for. So if you're a young company and you have a lot of young workers who aren't going to retire for a long time, it's okay to invest more heavily in stocks than if your obligations are to older workers or mostly to retirees. And the idea is that the obligations are very linked to the future wages of the workforce. If your workforce is young, those future wages are going to be related to the stock market. So if the stock market goes up, the wages are going to go up and your pension liabilities are going to go up. So in order to hedge against that increase in obligations, you want to invest in stocks. However, if most of your obligations are for people who are already retired, there's very little uncertainty in how much you're obligated to pay them. In fact, those obligations are very much like bonds. So if you want to invest in a way that minimizes the risk for these retirees and older workers, you would invest more in bonds. Part of my presentation was also talking about how these ideas compare with the actual investment practices of companies. What we see in the world is that companies invest quite heavily in stocks. They take quite a lot of risk in their pension investments. It's an open question whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that they take so much risk in their investments. My research suggests that probably they're taking more risk than they should. And so there are questions for regulation and governments in putting forth guidelines on how these pension liabilities should be measured and how much risk those investments should really be taken.